Let me extend a pleasant good evening and welcome to all who are gathered here for the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School Literary and Debating Society 2021 debating competition. In lieu of the fact that we do not still have the freedom of inter-island travel, this is going to serve to keep our debaters on the sharp side, where we continue to work them through the mill, ensure that they continue to practice and stay sharp in the skill sets of debating. And tonight they would be debating the moot, fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society. Let me acknowledge the presence of the Minister of Education and Social Development, Ms. Deanne, and Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Bonnie Richardson Lake, the Honorable Member of the House, Merrick Richardson, and the Principal for the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School, Chief Education Officer, Mr. Bren Romney, Member of the Opposition, Joseph Vanterpool, and the Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge. I would also like to say thank you and extend welcome to our distinguished judges. We do have a panel of experienced and qualified judges who would be introduced a little later down in the program. At this juncture, having said welcome to the debaters, we do appreciate you taking the time out to prepare yourselves and to come and treat us with what you have discovered or researched or learned from your experience while you were doing your research and preparation. We trust that it would be a learning experience and a teaching experience to those of us who would be privileged to hear you on the live front as well as in cyberspace. Let me say welcome to those who are joining us in cyberspace. Welcome one more time. At this time, I'm going to actually open in a quick word of prayer, and we get right into tonight's proceedings. Let's stand as we approach God's throne in prayer. Eternal God, our Father, we are delighted in the fact that you continue to show us your goodness. In spite of all that's happening around us, you remain the consistent and the constant in all things. While things change, you never do. We thank you for keeping your hand of blessing on Anguilla. We spend so much time complaining and mourning about what we don't have, but we pause long enough to say thank you for what we do have. We thank you tonight for the fact that some have gotten together and realized that the next generation are included in our future, and giving them the opportunity where they can come and speak on such important topics as fatherlessness affecting a society as we stand. We pray now that tonight's proceedings will proceed to bring glory and honor to your name, that there would be much respect, the courtesy, fairness, all the things that would bring about good discussion. We pray that in all of it, that we would acknowledge that it is because of your grace and mercy why we are able to accomplish this. We thank you for those who have had the driving forces behind what is happening tonight. We pray especially that you will give us clear minds and grant wisdom to the participants, all the debaters, that you will calm their nerves and that you would help them to deliver, and that they would continue to remember that they do represent you in every facet of their presentation. Thank you again for hearing our prayers, and may you be glorified in all that is said and done tonight. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen. Please remain standing as I call on Sherry Ann Francis and Tiandra Carty. They are going to do the national song and the school song for us. Lovely. You may be seated. I would like to say thank you so much to Sherianne and Tiandra. It is one of the most beautiful renditions I've actually heard of both the school song and the national song. Well done, and I trust that they would continue to keep playing. It's a beautiful sound, that flute, and I think they handled that piece of music really well. Shakespeare said, if music be the food of love, play on. So thank you again. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Premier, Dr. Lorenza Ellis Webster, to welcome you to the first of 3 nights of debating. The mood to be reminded, fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society. This time we're going to move like a steamroller and get things kicking as I will welcome to the podium Mrs. Rita Celestine Carty, and she's going to come and give us a few brief remarks.
Good evening to all, and I endorsed our protocol that is already in place, and I'll continue by saying that I'm very thrilled and proud that the Literary and Debating Society of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School has brought us out here this afternoon. Please give them a round of applause for doing so. It is obvious to everybody in the region that Anguilla's children love debating, and when we can't travel to do it, we do it right here at home. So pandemic or not, we are going to have our debating season. So I'm very pleased and proud of these students, their chief staff sponsor, and other sponsors. I don't have much else to say, but when you're in it, you have already won. And to hold up a trophy is just icing on the cake. So we look forward to what you have in store for us, some thought-provoking debates, and congratulations to you once again.
Say thank you to Mrs. Carty. That's what you call the definition of brief. At this time, I'm going to call the Chief Education Officer, one of my former students from high school. Yes, one of my former students from high school, Mr. Bren Rumney. He's going to come and give his brief remarks.
Good evening, everyone. I adopt the protocol already established. I was very pleased when I entered the auditorium and realized that we are all still celebrating the amazing performance of Yellow House yesterday. Come on. What can I say? We do appreciate our athletes and the wonderful job they did representing the best of the school yesterday. My congratulations to Maroon House on their victory. And I told the minister moments ago that this was a hospitable gift from Yellow House to Maroon House, seeing that it's her first year as minister. We could not hand her a defeat on her first sports day, so we decided to give her a victory out of consideration. But we will change that around in the years to come. But my congratulations to everyone and to the school for a wonderful event. I must start my remarks this evening by commending the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School Literary and Debating Society for hosting this local activity in lieu of the annual Leeward Islands Debating Competition. Tonight's activity is a testament to the value you attach to this activity, and you must be commended for it. I am very pleased with the decision to proceed with these 3 nights of local debates. The topics you're addressing are all timely and pertinent to the current challenges our island are faced with: fatherlessness, topics on issues in the tourism sector, and the impact of technology on our lives. As a past debater myself, I learned very early the very positive and timely impact this program can have on the life of a student. Debating within a framework of rules is a fundamental interpersonal activity in any society, and more so in a democratic society. There are many forms of debate in our society, ranging from the messy name-calling we tend to associate with politics, the shock jocks that we hear on radio, to prolonged exchanges in letters written to the editor of the Anguillan newspaper. Our society is by no means void of debates. Generally, as a people, we love a good debate. Irrespective to our personal approach to a debate, each debate should honor a timeless truth. Debating involves bringing relatively informed information to bear on a contestable proposition. It often requires model construction and defense. Debating in our school competition format requires mental agility, ingenuity, a deep knowledge of topical issues, speed in addressing and solving real-world problems, and a commitment to teamwork. The skills and values learned through debating are lifelong trappings to your ability to develop, justify, and defend a position on any topic. These are 21st century oral and written skills, just as they were used in the first century. They are timeless and relevant tools to take you into adulthood and the world of work. Many debaters also form close bonds as a result of many and varied shared experiences at school. The companionship and camaraderie exhibited amongst debaters are impressive indicators of the benefits of this activity. I encourage all of you, debaters and well-wishers alike, and the staff sponsors of this activity to continue the hard but important work of recruiting, training, and shaping more young minds through this activity. The Department and Ministry of Education will always be a reliable friend to the debating club. I am eagerly looking forward to each debate, and I wish each debater, each team, every success imaginable. Again, our sincerest thanks for hosting this local 3 nights of debate. I must apologize at this juncture. Unfortunately, I have another appointment at 7:30, so I'm going to sneak out as soon as, sometime shortly. Okay? But I do wish you every success, and I look forward to joining you in the other nights to come. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Romney. And he stopped short because he didn't want to say that he's going to sneak out just after his boss speaks. So I'm going to welcome to the podium to give her brief remarks the Honorable Deanne Kentish Rogers, Minister of Education and Social Development.
Good night, everyone. Hello? I don't know how many of you had the opportunity of watching the movie The Great Debaters with Denzel Washington, but he said, and I quote, "Debate is combat, and words are your weapons," unquote. So tonight, for the first time, you'll hear the Minister of Education saying, you have an opportunity to fight, civilly, of course. I remember the first line of Rebuttals at the literary and debating competition in St. Martin. The leader of the proposition, during her debate, said something to the effect of, "When people are not provided for, they will die of thirst." And then when the leader of the opposition rose to start his rebuttal, his opening line read, "In the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty." Of course, the audience erupted with laughter. But debating is not only about quick quips. They often only cause shallow wounds. It's more about active listening, identifying the gaps, and being able to communicate your ideas simply and effectively. It's about creating a picture correctly with comparisons and accurately using the parameters identified. That is how you execute a fatal blow. But most important to a skillful debater is taking your time, breathing, and connecting with your audience. For a final takeaway for this evening, I want you to remember that debating teaches you discipline, teamwork, and creativity, because you often have to think and come up with an answer on the spot. So to the debaters and the organizers of this evening's debating event, I want to say thank you for continuing this academic competition. So for tonight, I'll end with saying, good night, and may the best arguments win. Thank you.
By permission, I'm granted the permission by the Honorable Minister to correct a statement that was made by one of her employees. And she said to make sure tell you that if you look around the room, you see maroon curtains. And so I was advised, I was encouraged to say maroon still rules. I've delivered the message as effectively and as briefly as possible. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. At this time, we're going to move into the main event. On my right hand, weighing in at 210 pounds, it's a one fall, 10-minute time. Oh, this is WWF. No, it's debating. But it's a combat. And it gives me distinct pleasure and an honor to invite our debaters for tonight to the podium. Proposing the moot tonight would be Ivor Adams and Kishana Edwards, the leader of the proposition, Ivor Adams. And opposing the moot for tonight, the great Sikani Reed and Kyria Adams. Please come. You got a piece of advice from the Honorable Minister when she told you, learn to breathe. The best sharpshooters and snipers usually hold their breath for exactly about 6 seconds before squeezing the trigger. Anything beyond that, the body begins to tremble. Now I've actually given you a lesson in sniper rifles. Ooh, it's dangerous. I'm going to read the rules, and then I'm going to introduce your distinguished judges. Don't look at their faces and get worried. They are going to be listening to you tonight, and they are going to be paying attention to not just what you say, but how you say what you say. So just how you practiced in the mirror and with each other, you're going to do the same thing with your judges. Consider this to be your final practice, and they are going to actually just give you some feedback on how can you improve going forward. So, rules of engagement in this combat. The debate will comprise, of course, 2 teams comprising of 2 members each. Each team would have a leader and a seconder or a second speaker. The leader would be presenting first from the opposition side, and the leader speaks for 10 minutes, and then he also actually has his seconder, the leader of both leaders, that is the leader of the opposition, will also speak for 10 minutes. And then the leader, the seconder, will speak for 7 minutes. So we do have some timekeepers who will be keeping a track of your timekeeping skills. And when the debaters are completed, each person having delivered their argument, the moderator shall give 5 minutes of absolute silence. So I would need to hear an eyelash be able to hit the floor for rebuttal presentation. And then the debaters must understand you must channel your arguments through the moderator, who would be yours truly, Mr. Christmas. No insulting, no abusive language, no personal attacks. Neutral language must be maintained at all times. Once the arguments are completed, when the rebuttals begin, once the rebuttals are completed, the judges will retire, and they shall have about half an hour, 30 minutes, to deliberate and come back with a score. As you are introduced, your time will begin as soon as the moderator allows you to begin your argument. The timekeepers will start the watch. They will give you a warning at 1 minute to your argument or your time, your allocated time, and then you will get a time. The timekeeper will indicate that you are out of time. At the end of your presentation, the timekeepers will also give what time you spoke for. So we would get that straight from the timekeepers as soon as you are done your presentation. So let's go through those rules again. The leader of the proposition, you make your case for a maximum of 10 minutes. The leader of the opposition will then make his argument for a maximum of 10 minutes. Then the second speaker of the proposition will make her case for 7 minutes. Then the second speaker of the opposition will make her case for a period of 7 minutes. The leader of the opposition shall have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then the leader of the proposition shall have 5 minutes to present his rebuttal. At the end of each speaker allotted time, the speaker shall simply vacate the lectern or the podium. There are some adjudicators who will be escorted to a venue for their deliberations, and as we pointed out, the deliberations should not last more than 15 minutes. Before the start of the deliberations, the auditors will collect the score sheets on which the scores were achieved by each team, and these will be recorded by the 3 judges. The auditor will then compute the final scores, determine the winning team, and turn over the results to the special adjudicator, and the auditor is also allotted 15 minutes. During that time, while the judges are out deliberating, we can have discussion led by the moderator for about 10 to 15 minutes, and it should be relevant to the moot that is being discussed or debated. Once the officials have returned, then the chief best speaker adjudicator and the chief prepared presentation judge will give a brief, constructive critique of the debater's performance, after which the results, which everybody would be holding their breath, would be given. At this time, I would like to introduce all the officials who have been asked to assist tonight. And let me begin with the judges for Best Speaker. Mr. Kenneth G. Porter, a partner of law firm Sagis LP, holds a Bachelor of Laws degree with honors from the University of the West Indies, a legal education certificate from Norman Manley Law School in Jamaica, and a Master of Laws degree in Commercial and Corporate Law from the University of London. Kenneth is admitted to practice law in Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Jamaica. He has been a legal practitioner in Anguilla for more than 20 years and regularly provides practical and insightful advice on commercial and corporate issues, intellectual property, labor relations, and real estate matters to a wide portfolio of local, regional, and international clients. Kenneth is the director and the founding member of the Intellectual Property Caribbean Association. He is currently the deputy chairperson for the Anguilla branch of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, STEP. He is the current Anguilla Labor Tribunal chair and a member of the Board of Governors of the Anguilla Community College. Please let us welcome Mr. Kenneth G. Porter. Next to him, we have Mr. Kerith Kentish, a national, a former debater, and member of the Literary and Debating Society, managing partner with Joyce Kentish and Associates, past student and graduate of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School. He told me, you don't need to know any more about him. Please welcome Mr. Kentish. In the judges, we have Miss Lois Hazel, and she was also a member of the debating club as a student at the Valley Secondary School / Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School. She attended public speaking sessions and workshops in Antigua and St. Vincent. She has judged the introductory speech and question segments in regional shows, Miss JC's and Miss Carival. She has also done some time for the local pageants here in Anguilla. Miss Lois Hazel is currently a teacher of mathematics and economics at the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School and the owner of Carbon's Music Studio. She also enjoys reading. Please welcome Miss Lois Hazel. I have one judge here, Mrs. Jacinth Jeffers, that all I can actually tell you is that she is a lawyer. She works with John Benjamin and Associates and John Benjamin and Company, and she is one of our distinguished judges tonight. Her daughter was one of the star athletes yesterday at the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive Athletic Championships running for Pink House, and I must say, quite an improvement over 2019, and I would say congratulations on a stellar performance. Let me ask you to put your hands together and welcome Mrs. Jacinth Jeffers. Now we come to the main judge debate, last one, but not by no means least, not because of his height. Mr. Colin Johnson is a teacher at the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School, where he teaches both Spanish and French from 1st to 6th form. He has been a teacher for the past 34 years. Colin is one of the house masters of Yellow House, and so we do extend the deepest sympathies on yesterday's. Mr. Johnson is the coordinator of the NYPD debating club at the Campus B, Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School branch. Colin finds time to coach the Aurelia Kelly Primary School for football and athletics. He's also the technical director of the Anguilla Football Association. Mr. Johnson was the founder and coordinator of the very popular All-A-Wee Young Theater Players. which is an extremely vibrant drama and dance group. Culture, as he's affectionately known as, has choreographed many dances for local, regional, and international shows. He specializes in Caribbean, African, and Latin dances. Colin is also a popular MC and chairman at local shows and events in Anguilla. Mr. Johnson is a native of the island of Antigua, but has been living on Anguilla for the past 25 years, and we will extend his stay for another 25. Help me welcome Mr. Colin Johnson. Let me also extend a warm welcome to our timekeepers, Mr. Franklin Brandon and Mr. Fabian Brown. They will be our distinguished timekeepers for tonight. And our two auditors tonight who are going to be crunching our numbers would be Teacher Florian and Teacher Doyle. So let us welcome our auditors for tonight. At this time, we now get into what we all came here to experience tonight. And believe me, I have come here anticipating it will be an experience that you have never experienced before you will experience this experience. So, without any further ado, the moot for tonight, as has been presented earlier, is fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. Fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. The rules, in a nutshell, the leader of the proposition will present his argument first in 10 minutes, and he will be followed by the leader of the opposition for 10 minutes. Seconder of the proposition will speak for 7 minutes, and then the argument would be presented by the seconder or the second speaker for the opposition. Without any further ado, let me take the opportunity to welcome to the podium Mr. Ivor Adams, the leader of the proposition.
Frederick Douglass, an American escaped slave who went on to become a social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman, once said, and I quote, "It is easier to raise strong children than to repair broken men." Moderator, honorable judges, worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The proposition's position on the issue of creating and preserving stability in our communities is this: fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. Central to our argument is this fact: fatherlessness is the root of many other evils that threaten the stability of our society, and therefore is a greater threat than them all. Moderator, our argument is sound and undeniable. I will set out to prove our case by illustrating the following points. 1, the general importance of fathers to the children. 2, the importance of fathers to mothers. And 3, the importance of fathers in preventing child poverty. My colleague will further our position by showing 1, how fatherlessness leads to violence and crime. 2, how fatherlessness affects children's mental health. And 3, how fatherlessness leads to teenage pregnancy. At this point, I shall define the key terms of the moot. Fatherlessness, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is described as the state of having no father because he is dead or absent from the home. Threat is described as the possibility of trouble, danger, or ruin, and a stable society is considered to be a community in which the physical environment and personal relationships allows for social interactions group gatherings, and the establishment of organizations without fear, disruption, or protest. A stable society is one in which life moves along predictably. Point number 1, moderator: the general importance of fathers to their children. Moderator, the importance of a father to a child is paramount. A father is an anchor for a child. The assurance and thereafter the confidence a father gives to us is priceless. Research has shown that children want to make their fathers proud, and an involved father promotes inner growth and strength. Studies have shown that when fathers are affectionate and supportive, it greatly affects a child's cognitive and social development. It also instills an overall sense of well-being and self-confidence. Child Crisis Arizona, an organization that provides emergency shelter, foster care, adoption, counseling, early education, and parenting support services to Arizona's most vulnerable children, states, an active father helps increase children's emotional intelligence and problem-solving capabilities. Children raised with active dads tend to score higher on verbal and math tests, and are less likely to drop out of school or commit juvenile crimes. The emotional support provided by a father to this child helps them understand how much they are loved. Children with supportive fathers are more likely to have high self-esteem and are generally happier and more confident. And consider this, moderator, as we think of drug use and pregnancy in our community. It says, children also demonstrate a greater tolerance for stress and frustration, less hesitation or fear in new situations, and an increased ability to resist peer pressure and stand up for themselves. Fathers provide a positive male role model for their children and help to promote and reinforce good behaviors. As a result, children with more involved fathers tend to have fewer behavioral and impulse control problems, longer attention spans, and a higher level of sociability. These children also tend to be more compassionate and generous, with an increased awareness of the needs and rights of others. Last but not least, moderator, the article concludes this: having an active father makes a child feel loved. Having dad as a steady source of love and encouragement helps ensure that children grow up happy and healthy with high self-esteem. Point number 2, moderator: the importance of fathers to the mother. Moderator, we love our mothers. Without them physically bearing us, we would not be here. God bless them. But it has been noted that fathers provide a different perspective to mothers. Children are naturally full of questions, and mothers and fathers approach these questions in different ways. Active parents with different approaches to parenting can be a great way to expose children to a broad range of thinking and problem solving. Active fathers have a unique opportunity to share their perspective on life and teach their kids valuable life skills. Moderator, a stable society is built on people, not on theories and economies, and those people must be able to face the challenges ahead by thinking logically, creatively, and empathetically. According to the Greater Good magazine by Berkeley University, in an article entitled "Are Dads as Essential as Moms?" by Christine Carter, June 12, 2008, it states, and I quote, "Are dads as essential as moms?" I took a look at the research, and the short answer is yes, empathetically. Research shows that the love and care of fathers is equally important for the health and well-being of the children as mother love. Really. Children are way better off when their relationship with their father is sensitive, secure, and supportive, as well as close, nurturing, and warm, unquote. Moderator, the same article noted that one of the biggest problems with divorce is that when a father moves out, the father-child relationship frequently falters. If he stays in the game, his kids will cope far better with the divorce. Moderator, divorce affects the mothers as well. It affects everything from her mind to her pocketbook. Fathers are important to mothers. Moms are already stretched thin in earning for the family, in keeping house, and taking care of the children. The website internationalmom.com describes modern mothers this way: beyond exhausted, stressed out, burnt out, and stretched too thin. Unhappy, unhealthy mothers cannot lend to a more stable society, moderator. Apparently, fatherlessness greatly affects more than just the children of the family, and therefore the absence is a threat to all of society. Thirdly, moderator, let us examine the importance of fathers in preventing child poverty. Poverty is undoubtedly a grave and serious issue affecting all areas of the world. Here's why poor people are poor, says a conservative black academic, Thomas Sowell, according to an article entitled Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, an International Perspective. Quote, culture matters, of course, and Sowell has been courageous in calling attention to the growing acceptance of black ghetto culture that has rejected traditional values, dressing neatly, speaking proper English, achieving academic success, and raising children in the context of stable marriages. Moderator, Sowell argues that by the 1970s, these principles were demeaned in black communities as, quote, acting white, setting back the economic prospects of a generation of African Americans after decades of advances, unquote. What are the results of these attitudes to stable families, moderator? Unstable societies where the most vulnerable, our children, are driven deeper and deeper into poverty. The ALHCS 2017 report on child poverty in the Eastern Caribbean area stated, and I quote, Angola's child poverty rate was 7.2% at the time the SLC was conducted, some 35% higher than the equivalent rate for adults, 5.3%. Due to their higher poverty rate, children in Angola accounted for a higher proportion of the poor, 27.5%, than their population share of 22%, unquote. Additionally, moderator, fatherlessness is having a great impact on education. A US Department of Education study found that children are 4 times more likely to be poor if their father is not around. And we know that poverty is heavily associated with academic success. This study also found that fatherless kids are twice as likely to drop out. An article published in 2012 titled The Vital Importance of Paternal Presence in Children's Lives shows that 7 out of 10 high school dropouts are fatherless. Moderator, societies are formed by people, not by bricks and stone. And if by the absence of fathers, those people grow up unloved, untrained, and unstable, they will inexplicably lead to an unloving, reckless, and unstable society. The Art of Manliness website says, fathers tend to be taken for granted. Compare Mother's Day to Father's Day. But dads are like a steady, less sentimentalized institution. The sun in our familial sky that warms and gives life, but isn't thought about much unless it goes missing, unquote. How much more evidence do we need, moderator, before we call a spade a spade? This should be an uncontroversial statement. Indeed, fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society. I thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the leader of the proposition, Mr. Ivor Adams. He spoke for 10 minutes, 9 seconds. At this time, we are going to invite the leader of the opposition. He's going to come and he's going to speak for his 10 minutes on the moot, fatherlessness. And we welcome Sikani to the podium.
Moderator, honorable judges, worthy opponents, capable colleague, ladies and gentlemen, a very pleasant good evening. I rise to persuasively oppose the moot that states, and I quote, fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society, unquote. I will establish a factual and sound case by raising and reinforcing the following points. 1, fatherlessness is not the #1 threat to a stable society. 2, mothers are capable of raising well-adjusted children alone. And 3, lack of a father in a child's life does not automatically dictate that he will contribute to an unstable society. And my most capable colleague will further our opposition to the moot by raising the following points. 1, how inroads are being made in combating fatherlessness. 2, how fatherlessness has always been a threat, but never the number one threat. And 3, how natural disasters pose an even greater threat than fatherlessness. In order to make clear the parameters of our discourse, please permit me a brief moment to define the key terms of the moot. The OxfordLearnersDictionary.com defines fatherlessness as being without a father, either because he has died or does not live with his children. Pocket Oxford English Dictionary, 11th edition, defines threat as a possibility of danger. Stable as not easily disrupted, and society as a community of people living together with shared customs, laws, and organizations. Moderator, firstly, we would like to make abundantly clear that we do not deny that fatherlessness is a threat to a stable society, but we are completely opposed to the position that it is the number one threat to a stable society. An article entitled The Myth of the Fatherless Society, written by Anna Tarrant and Michael Ward, professors in sociology, published on February 20th, 2017, by theconversation.com. It states, and I quote, "Society has a problem with absent men. Every other week, it seems there are warnings that fathers aren't there for their families, and that men are absent from social institutions like childcare, school, and other support settings." Unquote. This quote blatantly states that society has a problem with absent men. We believe that this statement is a false premise for the claim that fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society, a claim which we have already stated we find to be totally incorrect. How can my opponents claim that fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society when there are a variety of much more dangerous threats, such as pandemic, terrorism, and bullying? Pandemic. Everyone alive today has seen the devastating effect a pandemic can have on our society. This is evident with our very own COVID-19 situation. This virus has significantly and negatively impacted the economy of many countries, as well as put a strain on the mental stability of many persons. This can be seen in our very own Anguilla. In the minutes of the 27th meeting of the 12th Anguilla Executive Council on January 21st, 2021, Dr. Aisha Andrew is quoted as stating, "COVID-19 remains an existential threat," unquote. Moderator, this is even more evidence of the drastic effect a pandemic has on our society. Terrorism. The terror created from terrorism creates tension and fear. This results in unjustified anger and hostility towards people. We see from the recent attacks on the US Capitol building that even domestic terrorism is a very real threat. President-elect Joe Biden said on January 6, 2021, and I quote, "To storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, and to threaten the safety of duly elected officials is not protest, it is insurrection," unquote. Do you know what insurrection is? According to Pocket Oxford English Dictionary, 11th edition, insurrection is a violent uprising against authority. This is even more evidence of the drastic and severe threat that terrorism can have on a society. Bullying. Bullying can have a permanent effect on the mental stability of a person. An article entitled "Bullying, Cyberbullying, and Suicide Statistics," written by Dr. Samir Hindjua and Dr. Justin Patchen, published on the megamayorfoundation.org. It states, and I quote, "Students who experience bullying or cyberbullying are nearly 2 times more likely to attempt suicide," unquote. From this, it can be interpreted that bullying has a serious effect on the safety of our society. Bullying is a far greater threat than fatherlessness, as there is no evidence that fatherlessness has resulted in suicide. While I am sure we are all aware that bullying has resulted in suicide attempts and actual suicides. And these are just a few of the threats facing society, which are far more dangerous than fatherlessness. With this undeniable evidence, can my opponents honestly say in good consciousness that fatherlessness is a much more dangerous threat than threats such as pandemics, terrorism, and bullying? I think not. Moderator, in support of my second point, which is mothers are capable of raising well-adjusted children alone, I would like to make reference to a few persons who have made significant contributions to society despite the absence of a father figure or a father. Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Kevin Hart. We have a president and vice president of the United States, and we have a well-known comedian. These people are a testament to the fact that mothers are capable of raising well-adjusted children alone. Children who can make a significant and meaningful contribution to society. Moderator, these three persons are just a few of the well-known persons who have been raised solely by their mothers, but have still been able to make a significant contribution to their communities and society generally. Moderator, this brings me to my third point. Lack of a father in a child's life does not automatically dictate that he will contribute to an unstable society. An article entitled, "The Effects of Absent Fathering on Children's Well-Being," from psychologytoday.com, written by Blake Griffin Edward, licensed psychotherapist, published on April 11, 2020, states that according to a 2019 U.S. Census Bureau study, from nearly 16 million children, about 21% live only with their mothers, compared to 8% in 1960. This article shows that over the years, the number of fatherless children has increased. A second article entitled "Crime Rates in the United States 2020," written by SafeHome.org team, published on April 16, 2020, states, and I quote, "At least 11.6 million criminal incidents were reported to law enforcement agencies throughout the United States in 1999. By 2018, that number had declined to just over 8.4 million, despite a population increase of 20% during that time." Moderator, these two articles show that though fatherlessness has increased over the years, there has been no increase in the number of crimes in the United States. This completely shatters the proposition claims that more fatherlessness will result in more crime. Moderator, I believe that when my learned colleague lends her voice to this debate, the opposition will be found to have kept its promise to oppose the moot. While fatherlessness is a threat to a stable society, we remain completely opposed to the moot, which states fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. The opposition rests momentarily while we await supporting arguments of my learned colleague.
That was the leader of the opposition, Mr. Sikani Reed. He spoke for a time of 9 minutes and 28 seconds, opposing the moot. Fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. So we now call on Ms. Kishana Edwards, the second speaker for the proposition, and she will present her argument in a time of 7 minutes allocated.
Prolific American author Clarence Bunnington Kelland once wrote, "My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it." Moderator, honorable judges, most worthy opponents, good evening. The proposition's position on the issue of creating and preserving stability in our communities is this: fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society. My able colleague aptly laid the foundation of our argument by showing, 1, the general importance of fathers to their children, 2, the importance of fathers to the mother, 3, the importance of fathers in preventing child poverty. I will further our argument by showing the general import how fatherlessness leads to violence and crime, 2, how fatherlessness affects children's mental health, 3, how fatherlessness leads to teenage pregnancy. Again, moderator, we remind you that society relies chiefly on people, and if the primary institution of people, the family, is destroyed, there is absolutely no hope for us to regain a prosperous society of any type. Firstly, moderator, let us consider how fatherlessness leads to violence and crime. Crime remains a huge destabilizer of societies all around the world, including the Caribbean. A 2 July 2016 article written in the Jamaican Observer stated, and I quote, "Research done in the Caribbean, the United States, and the United Kingdom show that fatherless children are 11 times more likely to display violent behavior, 9 times more likely to run away from home, becoming victims or perpetrators of crime, 6 times more likely to end up in prison, and 9 times more likely to become gang members," unquote. Now that is a true destabilizer if I ever heard one. How do we root out violence and crime in our communities? By building father-led homes again, by teaching our boys the pride and joy and benefits of having a family, by encouraging fathers to be fathers. Secondly, moderator, we take a look at how fatherlessness affects a child's mental health. In a 2018 article entitled, "A Father's Impact on Child Development" at allkids.org, it is reported, father engagement reduces psychological problems and rates of depression in young women. Furthermore, moderator, the researchers noted that father involvement leads to emotional, academic, social, and behavioral outcomes for children. Children who feel a closeness to their father are half as likely to experience multiple depression symptoms, unquote. Again and again, a clear pattern emerges. We identify a destabilizer of society. Then we dig a little deeper and find that fatherlessness is the root cause. My third and final point is this, moderator, how fatherlessness leads to teenage pregnancy. It was not so long ago that the so-called thinkers of the world steadily promoted single parenthood as not a simple reality, but as something preferred or desirable. Women can do it on their own, they shouted. Women don't need men. Meanwhile, no one asked the children if they need their fathers. Well, newsflash, they do. According to the Pediatric Associates of Franklin, in an article entitled "Fathers and Their Daughters," and I quote, "Young girls depend on their fathers for security and emotional support. A father shows his daughter what a good relationship with a man is like. If a father is loving and gentle, his daughter will look for those same qualities in men," unquote. Moderator, let us admit that teenage pregnancy is one of the great disruptors of society. The girl's educational performance is lowered, postponed, or even completely derailed. The financial burden on the girl's family can be significant if the father is unsupportive and the resulting child is also put into a less than ideal home environment, again, without a father. Moderator, it would be downright careless of us to ignore the link between absentee fathers and teen pregnancy. We do not rejoice in reporting these facts about fatherlessness, but the facts are the facts. In an article by Colin Allen entitled, "Father Absenteeism Linked to Daughter's Sexual Activity," published on June 9, 2016, in Psychology Today, it states, and I quote, "A father's absence in itself seems to put daughters at risk for having children early. Girls whose fathers left either before they were born or up to age 5 were 7 to 8 times more at risk of becoming pregnant as an adolescent than girls living with their fathers. A father's departure between ages 6 to 13 suggested a 2 to 3 times greater risk of becoming pregnant," unquote. Moderator, these observations of a link between fatherlessness and teen pregnancy are critical for us in the Caribbean, where we observe teen pregnancy rates spiking like never before. According to the Pan American Health Organization, on 28 February 2018, written, "Adolescent pregnancy rates in Latin America and the Caribbean continue to be the second highest in the world, estimated at 66.5 births per 1,000 girls aged 15 to 19 years, second only to sub-Saharan Africa," unquote. Moderator, we have made our case in a clear and fair fashion and supported it with unquestionable facts. As the underlying cause of so many of society's ills, fatherlessness emerges as the chief culprit threatening our communities. Now, moderator, since fatherlessness is an underlying cause of many of the ills that plague society, we can therefore logically conclude that fatherlessness is the #1 cause to a stable society. I thank you.
Say thank you to Ms. Kishana Edwards. She spoke for a time of 7 minutes and 29 seconds. We now turn over to the second speaker for the opposition, Ms. Kyria Adams, and we welcome her to present and support her leader in the moot, "Fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society." Please come, Ms. Adams.
Admittedly, moderator, fatherlessness remains a serious concern for our communities. But let us be clear, by no means can it be considered the #1 threat facing our people. Moderator, honorable judges, my esteemed opponents, students, parents, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I rise in complete support of my colleague in opposing the moot, which incorrectly states, and I quote, "Fatherlessness is the #1 threat to a stable society," unquote. My able colleague initiated our assault on the moot by demonstrating how, 1, fatherlessness is not the #1 threat to a stable society. 2, mothers are capable of raising a well-adjusted child on their own. And 3, a lack of fathers does not automatically mean there will be an unstable society. I will now follow our argument by showing, 1, how inroads are being made in combating fatherlessness. 2, fatherlessness has always been a reality in our societies, but never the #1 threat. And 3, how natural disasters are a far greater threat than fatherlessness. Firstly, moderator, it should be noted that the issue of fatherlessness is not being ignored and is being discussed, studied, reported on, and social media programs are being implemented. there is help for single mothers at the family level. The Indian Express, on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, in an article entitled Almost Parents, stated, and I quote, "Unmarried or single siblings make themselves a part of their niece or nephew's life, investing time and effort into raising a child that isn't their own. A lot of uncles and aunts are being a father or mother figure," unquote. This is not unique to any particular culture, moderator. Driven by love, concern, and human compassion, families are known to rally around each other in times of need. Additionally, there is help for single mothers at the community level. We like to say that no one can replace a father in a child's life, but this is not entirely true. There are men who have taken children not of their own, cared for them, guided them, supported them, and encouraged them. We hear it from time to time in graduation speeches and award ceremonies. I want to thank my coach, who is like a father to me. I want to thank my cadet leader, who is like a father to me. We must applaud those sports programs, cadets in other clubs, church youth groups, and other community programs where men in leadership mentor boys and girls through their formative years. Secondly, moderator, I propose that fatherlessness has always been a reality in our societies, but never the #1 threat. Here in the Caribbean, we have had 3 major societal challenges: the period of enslavement of the Africans and European colonization, the period of emerging new independent territories, and this period of economic development within the global community. At no point, moderator, not when the slave master's whip was on our backs, not when we were wrestling with world powers for control of our own destinies, and not today when we are outnumbered, outgunned, and disadvantaged, did fatherlessness lead the conversation or dominate our mindset as the #1 threat. Thirdly, and finally, moderator, please permit me to demonstrate how natural disasters are a far greater threat than fatherlessness. The sad reality is, like many regions around the world, we are always under threat or assault by one natural phenomenon or another. Consider the threat of volcanoes in the Caribbean. The University of the West Indies Seismic Research Center stated in an article on their website, useismic.com, and I quote, "There are 19 live volcanoes in the Caribbean, meaning likely to erupt again. Every island from Grenada to Saba is subject to the direct threat of volcanic eruptions." Moderator, it goes on to state, islands from Grenada to St. Eustatius and Saba have live volcanic centers, while others such as Anguilla, Barbados, and British Virgin Islands, which are not volcanic, are close to volcanic islands, and are subject to the threat of volcanic hazards, such as severe ashfall and volcanically generated tsunamis, unquote. Moderator, please consider that an occurrence does not have to manifest itself in order to be classified as a threat. Fatherlessness is a reality we live with and presently combat, but natural disasters are far more threatening. And it is not only volcanoes, moderator. Dare we ever forget the reality that was Hurricane Irma? A savage superstorm that ravaged several islands and disrupted life for years to come. Anguilla's secondary school system is still trying to recover to this day. Hurricane Irma was one of the costliest hurricanes in history, with an estimated total of $50 billion in damage, according to the National Hurricane Center. And then there's the Haitian earthquake of 2010. In a 25th November article entitled Facts About the Haitian Earthquake, worldvision.org reported, and I quote, "A magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck Haiti on the afternoon of January 12, 2010. Roughly 250,000 lives were lost and 300,000 people were injured." The article concludes with this: about 1.5 million individuals were forced to live in makeshift internally displaced person camps. As a result, the country faced its greatest humanitarian need in its history, unquote. Moderator, admittedly, fatherlessness is a reality we live with and presently combat. But as my colleague and I have demonstrated, by no means can it be considered the number one threat. I thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and listening audience, 7 minutes, 4 seconds, Ms. Kyria Adams, wrapping up the main arguments for the evening. I see some parliamentarians, some future lawyers. I see that they have put on their boxing gloves. They're warming up. They're warming up. They're going to receive a 5 minutes of total silence while they prepare their rebuttals, and we begin the rebutting part of this session with the leader of the opposition at the end of their preparation period. So I will say when the 5 minutes begins, and it would begin as of now. boxing match, when the bell sounds, it usually means move to your respective corners. When it tinkles again, it means you come back in with your fists up and ready to duke it out. At this time, I'm going to call on the leader of the opposition, Mr. Sikani Reed, to present his rebuttal given in the time period of 5 minutes. Mr. Sikani Reed.
Moderator, honorable judges, worthy opponents, noble colleague, I return to further our opposition to the moot and to point out certain inconsistencies in the propositions debate. You heard our opponents say, fathers can guide and mold their children. But did you hear when my most noble colleague correctly stated that family input can help and benefit this child? Let's say this. You have your mother, and you could have an aunt, an uncle. All of these people would gladly help you. And you are seeing more and more, as my colleague rightfully stated, unmarried or single siblings make themselves a part of their niece or nephew's life. Moderator, this quote shows that more and more that family members are quickly joining in helping their siblings to raise and help raise their children. We have heard my opponents try to attempt to convince you that fatherlessness is the number one threat, an attempt that we, the opposition, can only describe as grasping at straws. Moderator, my opponents made the claim that fatherlessness may lead to teenage pregnancies, but do they honestly believe that this is the only factor that will affect this? There can be a multitude of other factors such as peer pressure, or even a certain influencer who views it as being cool or all right, or think that's a good idea. And moderator, my opponents are still stating that fatherlessness is number one threat to a stable society. How can they make this outrageous claim when we, the opposition, has given a variety of other threats which are far more dangerous, such as, I reiterate again, pandemic, terrorism, and bullying. And as my most noble colleague stated, natural disasters. How can they say that fatherlessness is more dangerous than threats such as natural disasters when we have all seen the devastating effect that natural disasters can have on a community? We saw this with our very own superstorm, Hurricane Irma. This virus came and wrecked Banguela, and we are still trying to recuperate. We are still on the shift system. This virus destroyed buildings, destroyed campuses. It destroyed our very way of life. We used to go to school from 8 to 3, but the reality is now some children go 7 to 11:30, others go 12:15 to 5:10. This is a very long day, especially for any teachers who has to teach in the morning and afternoon shift. My opponents made the claim that fatherlessness leads to violence and crime. But I ask again, do they really believe that this is the only factor that will lead to violence and crime? There can be a variety of other factors. Once again, I say, peer pressure, maybe a friend wants you to go skip school, go to Ashley's, but take a chocolate bar without asking. Who knows? Moderator. My opponent stated that the best part of having a father is a positive male role model. But I ask you, was my colleague not completely correct when stating that that gap can be filled by another father figure, maybe an uncle, a relative, a cousin, who knows? Finally, moderator, We accept that our opponents are correct in their view that fatherlessness is a threat to a stable society, but they are completely incorrect in their contention that fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. In this circumstance, the opposition remains completely opposed to the moot. The opposition rests.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. He spoke and he rebutted in a time of 4 minutes, 44 seconds. So now for the gauntlets to be almost rest down, we're going to invite the leader of the proposition who began the argument on the moot fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society to come with his rebuttal. Mr. Ivor Adams.
Moderator, I have returned to the lectern to pick at the two debates presented by the first and second speaker of the opposition and to outline how they both have unintentionally destroyed their own argument, boosted our argument, and proved that fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. Moderator, the first speaker of the opposition stated how fatherless children can still prove to be successful people in society. He gave the example of Obama and Kamala Harris. But moderator, I would like to say, though we can outline those who persevered through their difficulties of not having a father, we still have to observe the many children who suffer without a father, who still grow up to be criminals or unstable mentally, and how this threatens our society. Moderator, the first speaker stated that bullying is a greater threat to our society than fatherlessness. The proposition would like to state that bullying as well as bullying alone can be their own, with the supporting fact that fathers' roles can be filled with those of uncles or aunts. However, this helps our argument, moderator. This is stating that fatherlessness is a serious issue, and then it has to be coped by uncles and aunts stepping in to fill the roles that fathers should provide for their children. Moderator, I would have loved to come up here with quick quips and smart statements to attack the opposition, but fatherlessness is too grave of an issue. We really have to look at the facts. And as the minister, my debating idol, stated, we must create a picture clearly with parameters. We have given you our parameters, and here is our picture. Fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. I thank you.
The leader of the proposition, Mr. Ivor Adams, 4 minutes, 33 seconds in his rebuttal. That brings us to the end of the boxing match. And so the referees would now be granted a chance. First, the auditors would collect the score sheets in a few minutes from the adjudicators. It's a big word meaning our judges. And then the judges would be retiring for a period of 15 minutes. During that time, they would present or collate their arguments and their helpful discussions they would bring back to the panels. And the auditors would be doing their number crunching during that time as well. And we would hopefully be able to engage meaningful discussion. Now, may I actually point out that our responsibility tonight in discussion is not geared toward the debaters. We normally leave that for the judges to let them know what were their weaknesses, their strengths, what they can improve on, etc. We are here to literally, if you want, you can literally encourage them, applaud them for, what you've noticed that was good about what they presented tonight. Thank them for the presentation, but it is to have a meaningful discussion about how can we improve. If we think that it is actually a number one threat to society, or we don't think it's a number one threat to society, and of course, we're able to present it in such a way that it presents both sides of the coin. As tonight you have heard two sets of young people ably present their arguments. I think they have done well, and we should give them a round of applause for a job, in my opinion, that was well done. And they can breathe now. They can come up for air. As we noticed, no oxygen needed. They are now actually feeling a little bit more relaxed. And so the adjudicators, they are leaving, and so are the auditors. So the moot before us tonight happens to be fatherlessness is the number one threat to a stable society. I can actually start the ball rolling, and maybe we can have some added input concerning the function or the role of a father, because I think that sometimes people believe that being the other biological half of a child qualifies a person as father. And unfortunately, sometimes the argument is presented, a mother can be a father. And that's a big argument. And I said, perhaps we just need to actually find out exactly, do you agree with the moot or do you oppose the moot, and why? So we have, of course, the Minister, Social Development. She is best able to begin this ball rolling.
Good night, everyone. I first want to start off by congratulating both the proposition and the opposition on a job well done.
Yes.
We obviously have very confident public speakers in the four of you, and I look forward to seeing more debates from you. My first comment really relates to the moot, and the comment really, the problem that I have found with moots over the years is that they become very limiting when you use terms like the number one, the biggest, the smallest, the worst. Because what you then end up doing is boxing in the debate. So you limit one side of the argument so that they have to defend something in an absolute manner, whereas another side can use a more nuanced argument to tease it out. And so for me, I think going forward, one of the things I would like to see is moots that engage both sides a little bit more equally so that we can hear them really getting into details about why the moot is correct or incorrect. But outside of that particular issue with moots, I think this topic is a very timely one given circumstances that have been occurring in the world and in Anguilla. But I would say that from my personal perspective, I think that fatherlessness does have an impact on our societies. But, and I do think it's an impact that we sometimes like to speak of it in terms of the criminality of young people They're engaging in activities like early teenage pregnancy, etc. But there are also more underlying, I'll say minute causes to fatherlessness, which sometimes impact young women, growing up without fathers, having that father figure in your life does allow you to develop a sense of confidence. And speaking as someone who didn't grow up with my father in my life throughout my entire life, I have had other father figures come in to kind of assume that role, but there is also the feeling from young women, the feeling of abandonment. And sometimes you'd see young women, and this is a general statement, is not specific, and it might not hold for everyone, but searching for the love that they would have wanted from their father in other figures. And I think that it goes to say that in your romantic relations with others, I think both men and women have to be careful when they're choosing partners to choose very carefully. And to have, especially in circumstances where you are looking for a partner and you're looking to build a family, because building a family is a serious job, and taking care of a child is a serious responsibility, and it takes multiple people to raise a child. It is very difficult, and you can't successfully raise a child by yourself, but it is something that should be shared between, I think, multiple persons. It takes a community to raise a child. So I think that there is an impact on our societies. Would I say that it's the number one impact? I might not agree with that particular point, but I do think that there is a very obvious impact to the society of not having fathers in the family home and around the children.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And some very salient points raised there. Honorable.
Good evening. I would like to start off just by saying congratulations to all of the debaters for a job well done. I'm happy to see that the Literary and Debating Society has been left in some very capable hands. In fact, I was kind of regretting the fact that this was being live streamed, because I'm thinking that the other countries might be looking along and realizing the pressure that Anguilla is going to have coming their way at the next Leeward Islands competition. The comment that I want to offer is just kind of like an interesting thought I had, as well as an observation. In listening to both the definitions put forth by the proposition and the opposition as it relates to fatherlessness, based on the proposition's definition, I would not be viewed as fatherless or at any point in time in my life. But based on the opposition's definition, there would have been a point in time in my life where I would have been viewed as fatherless. Reason being, the scope of the proposition's definition included the presence of the father in the household. Now, that leaves scope for whether that's physical presence or just, present, actively present in the household. Whereas the opposition's definition pretty much said, you're fatherless if he is dead or if he does not live with you. So the point in time in my life where I would have lived with my mother, in my mind I was like, was I fatherless then? Or when I went to university, was I both motherless and fatherless? Because the thing is, definitions are interesting. As the Minister of Education said, your role as a debater, you have to kind of paint that picture within the parameters. And when you're just given a moot, how you paint that picture and the perspective you take is often based on the definitions you lay out, because that's the foundation of your argument.
Correct.
So here was I thinking to myself, if I was in the proposition shoes, I would have been like, well, of course you're going to think that it's not the number one issue because you don't understand it. According to your definition, I would have been fatherless, but I'm not fatherless, or would you say that I am negatively impacted as a result of that? But on the same note, you may understand why the opposition may take a looser or more generalized definition, because it allows them the openness to be able to make those nuanced arguments. It gives them a bit more leeway and a bit more freedom of scope. So I thought that was an interesting observation, just showing like how you can kind of structure your arguments given the moot to kind of pursue different angles. An interesting thought that I had that I was interesting to hear, and I'm still interested in hearing if anyone in the audience has any thoughts on, we're talking about the effects of fatherlessness in the household. On the whole thought of whether, okay, it means the father being physically present or not. The fathers who tend to leave households in the first place don't tend to be the ones who are going to be the positive role models. So just by them staying in the house, are we in fact fixing the problem if in fact that may lead to a more toxic environment, or if that may lead to in fact more negative role models or behaviors being put forth in the household? So that was an interesting angle that I thought could have been explored, and that I was actually interested in hearing what people think. Would we be fixing the issue if we were to find somebody to keep the fathers in the household if they're not setting the right example and still living up to their responsibilities, or etc.? As the Minister of Education says, choose a good father. In other words, choose a good partner. But with that, I just want to say once again, job well done. I think that, you know what, at the next Leeward Islands, I'm going to have to make a special effort to attend in person to see Anguilla destroy the competition. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Job well done to the proposition and the opposition. I can confidently say that the Adams family is a debating family. I've been told on many occasions that I'm an Adams. You're sure Patricia is not your mother? You're sure Mr. Adams didn't go to Jamaica? I mean, I welcome. It's a family of teachers and doctors and so on, so why not? I don't think I look like them, but people in Anguilla say I am an Adams, so I don't know. I am a daddyless daughter, though. That I am sure of. I wasn't raised by my father. I was raised by my mother. And I'm a citizen of an unstable society. I come from Jamaica, and statistics show that we got in the household. Fatherlessness does not only look at daddies who are absent and not there completely. He might be there, but he's just not a father figure. And though I might agree that many of our issues stem from fatherlessness, I think that they also stem from how women raise boys and how women raise children as well. And so when Mr. Christmas said, can mothers play the role of fathers? We absolutely cannot.
I agree.
We cannot be fathers.
That's correct.
And I've seen it in so many situations where women had to step up and be mommies and be daddies, but I think they're just being mommies.
Good mothers.
Yeah, we cannot be fathers, and our issues stem a lot from how women raise our children. There is a saying that says, don't come between women and their boys. You know, don't come between mothers and their sons. And so women raise children who become issues to society because we don't know how to be fathers, you know, and that is probably as a result of absent fathers in the household. So it goes right around to not having someone there to show you how to be a father, you know. But I just want to close by saying, or asking the question, and I like to go a little bit deeper. Is it that we have this shameful legacy coming from slavery of not having our black men in the household to teach our boys how to be men? Is that the reason why our societies are destabilized? That's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And how do we then tackle this? How do we get our men to stay in the homes and to be functioning role models and to perform their roles? You know, is it that we need to go right back to that psychological aspect of it, you know, to, I guess, to change how our societies are? But Good job, opposition, proposition. I must commend that little tiny girl on the opposition. You're small, but your voice is big, and I like that. So keep that up. So, yeah.
All right, so a lot of thoughts have been shared, and perhaps one of the things that may be actually plaguing us as a society is because fatherhood has been redefined. The problem is that fatherhood was God's idea. Let's begin at the very beginning. It was God's idea. Once you pitch God through the door, a society will break. If you play by God's rules, who happen to put us together, then you pretty much get functional roles being recognized. Now, I am glad you agree that a mother cannot be a father. That's a fact of life. Why? Because people do not understand that the chief responsibility of parenting is modeling. A child does not learn by what you tell them, they learn by what they are observing. And so it is hypocritical for the father to come home drunk every evening and tell his boys or his girls that this thing is bad for you. That's very poor taste in, you're just being a very good hypocrite in the home. And reality is that when God put the family together, because it was his idea, there were 4 functional roles that were handed to fathers. The first one was that of protector. All right, just now said? The broad-shoulderedness of a father gives a child the assurance. Gives the child the assurance that he is the guardian and the gladiator in the family. Have you ever seen how boys literally walk when their fathers actually have what is called an imposing presence? Have you ever seen how girls literally, if her dad wakes up every day and tells her that she's beautiful and that she's smart, and he reassures her, the first idiot boy that comes along and say, me love you long time, And he says, you're beautiful. And she said, me know, my father tell me that every day. You see, the assurance is there. So father is protector. The second thing he is actually the priest. That's the person that is supposed to act on behalf of God and family. That's what father is responsible for. And then the third thing is that he's supposed to be provider. Now, I'm going to say something that might get myself in trouble. When a father walks away from his family, even if he has toxic issues with the mother, he has no right to negate his responsibility as father. And that's what happens, that breaks the society. He has issues with the mother, and so a lot of fathers break off their responsibilities of being father to their children. Being a husband and being a father are 2 different responsibilities. And that's what happens when a father doesn't realize that he is responsible for providing for his children. And the 4th thing that a father must recognize is that he must be a parent. That is someone who guides his child. And that comes from both speaking and living. Because like I said, children want to know that they can speak very proudly of their dads. And that's why Father's Day is so, like I said, you go and you pass by the Fair Play Complex, Mother's Day, the gifts are all on the outside, and, people are buying all the things for mom. And Father's Day, you're lucky if you get a tie. I mean, it's just sad. But I want to say that there are some very good fathers in our society, and I have been observing. And I've realized that a lot of fathers in Anguilla have actually stepped up their A game. They are the ones who actually are there to pick up their children from preschool and primary school. A lot of the fathers are the ones who drop the children off during the school day, and they really actually, some of the fathers have taken some, and they do get a bad rap because there is such a thing called a bad mother too. I know we don't like to talk about it, but there are some mothers who are horrible at mothering. And there are fathers who are good fathers. They really take up the mantle and they run with this thing. And so, the 4 kinds of fathers you find in the world: the godless father, the one who has no fear of God. Now, man, you have the good-for-nothing father, the one who does nothing for mankind. Then you have the good fathers who actually, they're morally, they're ethically sound. And then you have the God-fearing fathers who stand in the gap and represent the Father who is the Father of all fathers. So do we have anyone else who wants to contribute? Fatherlessness is actually causing a lot of our Caribbean societies to suffer tremendously. Sometimes when I have to deal with some of the troubled young men, the only problem they're having is the fact that there is no father. That's it. They're deemed by society to be bad. They're deemed by society to be, dysfunctional. And when you talk to them, you get to know them, you find out it's just the father. They just can't find someone who they can look up to, who's someone who can mentor them, someone who can reach out to them. And as you said, it has to be modeled. It's not so cute, when the little boy puts on his mommy's high heels and tries to put on her lipstick, because that's where, a man comes in and he says, boy, that's not for you. Boy, go take them things off. And he literally shapes the child and pushes him in the direction that he's supposed to be going. And guess what? Mom would take pictures on her phone and send it to her friends on Facebook. And that's her little boy. Because she thinks that, it's cute because that's mom. But dad has the responsibility to erase that and say, listen, son, when you grow up, you're supposed to look like me. And that's where a big problem is in our societies. It's the modeling that's missing, the mentoring that's missing. Lots of fathers are present, but they are not fathering. Anyone else? So how many of you actually agree that the mood is actually, it's the number one? Or maybe we don't know what the problems are in our society. I mean, I just heard an appeal going out recently concerning foster parents. So obviously we're arriving at the place where children are in trouble.
There are a lot of unsafe children in Anguilla, and this is not just in terms of the home environment. It's our community as a whole. Our community protects our young people as well. And the appeal for foster parents comes from the Department of Social Development, is really trying to appeal to the community to tell them, hey, sometimes there are broken homes, there are dysfunctional homes, there are homes where children may be victims of verbal, physical, or sexual abuse. And as citizens in this very small community, our obligation is to stand in the gap. If we really believe that it takes a village to raise a child, it is our obligation to stand in the gap. We can't just look for someone else to do it all the time. Sometimes we have to say, this is the moment, I am here. So if anybody's interested in fostering a child, please contact the Department of Social Development at 497-3930. Thank you very much.
Okay, quickly for a commercial break. Snacks to help the society can be purchased at the end of the debate. All items, I smelled some very nice goodies outside. They can be purchased at, I think, all items are $1. So they have drinks, they have eats, but you can purchase them if you are indeed hungry. The Honorable.
Yes, certainly. If we accept the moot as stated, then we'd have to say Anguilla is a failed society, and I would hate to say that because we have always been a matriarchal society where mothers have taken care of children, fathers have left to go find work elsewhere and send their remittances home or come home when they can. And it just seems that, if we accept that it's the number one threat, fatherlessness, I just think that's a very strong statement to make, and I don't agree with it, of course. Certainly I think both sides made great arguments. You know, I'm rooting for the opposition because I think that, you know, they outlined, you know, certain other threats that I think, even though they may not affect all societies at the same time, I think the impact of those can be very devastating. And so I tend to say that fatherlessness is something that is of significant concern in every society. And certainly you've outlined how some of the young men that you have dealt with, and I'm sure there are also young women that you would have counseled who
Yes.
it becomes an issue of mentoring
That's right.
and not having that role model that they can look up to. But I think that mothers have done great in Anguilla to
And I
get
agree.
this society where it is and where it came from. And so I want to say for the strong women, you know, thank you.
Of course.
And for the fathers who have stayed home or have stayed engaged and involved, you know, I think that they should be given kudos also. So I think this is a very important subject, though, and should be continue to discuss these things as our societies continue to progress and modernize.
Thank you. I think we had, and then,
I didn't want to miss the opportunity to commend our debaters. I know that they are great people already, but now that they have presented to us on this very important topic, I want to commend them again. And I think all the comments about the moot could only be possible because of the way they treated with it, the way they interpreted it, and the way they presented the two very distinct sides of their argument. So, job well done to you. And then I want to add the rebuttals. I was very, very pleased, even if it's just the length of the rebuttals, because in the past we had a very serious problem with staying out for 5 minutes. You know, it is very, very difficult. Deanne used to do it best. She stayed up there and just found things to say. And I found that both of the leaders of the debate this afternoon were able to actually recall claims and really... Yes, so I think that our struggle with that part is now over. And I am very, very pleased. So thank you again. It was a great debate.
yes. Mrs. Franklin, and then,
I just wanted to put something forward, whether it was causation or correlation. And in our looking at it, I think we need to determine if it is a cause or if there's a correlation between fatherlessness and some of the issues. So that may be something for future discussion.
okay. Cayenne?
Good evening. As a child, I'm going to speak out. I think the problem lies when it's becoming normal. I think mothers are accepting it as of this generation now. They're accepting that fathers aren't going to be fathers, and so let me just step in. And then that teaches the child that fathers aren't going to be fathers, so then when I grow up, I'm not going to be a father, and it keeps repeating, and it repeats for generations, and that becomes normal. So I don't think it will have to be a change in the mothers to say, this is not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be a father, but because the father is not there, this is what happens. So it keeps repeating, and I don't think it'll end.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. See, hearing it from a child's perspective, it puts us right back on the right footing, that sometimes it's a cultural shift. That's what it is. It's a cultural shift where people accept things as being normal when they are not. And the children will tell you how they feel, because there's that absentee. There's a gap in a child's life when one of the parents go missing. The Honorable Cora.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. First of all, I want to congratulate both teams. I think that they did an excellent job.
Yes.
It was not necessarily an easy topic.
That's right.
Because number one threat, you have to both make the argument in favor and the argument against. And so I thought that both sides did a brilliant job in bringing the
Yes.
core issues to the forefront. I also want to thank the young lady because I thought that her statement was very insightful, and it ties into the point I was going to make, that a lot of times mothers may not necessarily want to have to be both mother and father, but they're required to step in and fill the gap because sometimes fathers may be absent. Now, there are many reasons why fathers may be absent. It may be by their own choice. It may not be by their own choice. And sitting as an attorney, I see in many cases, divorce cases, etc., where the conflict between the parents flows over to the children, and it negatively impacts the children. And so we as adults have to be very careful that when we make decisions, and we make decisions based on our emotions, etc., the children are likewise impacted based on that. So if we say we're angry with the mother or the father, we're not going to let them see the child, that child is impacted. And many children don't talk about what is happening with themselves. They don't talk about their emotions, their feelings, they bottle it up. But a lot of times, if we really dig down to the root of the issues that many of our children may have that are being exhibited in the classroom, in the classroom, in the general setting among their peers, etc., and you sit down and dig a little, you'll find that a lot of times the issues start in the home. And so it's very important, and that's why this topic is so important as well. And I also like generally to say that the next 2 nights from the topics I see are also going to be very interesting, and I hope to be here because each proposition and opposition will bring contrasting views, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that we may have, they peep through the door. People can probably they're ready? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, debaters, are you ready? All right, you better be ready because they're going to come whether you're ready or not. So we're going to actually, so the adjudicators are here, and we are going to ask the chief best speaker, adjudicator, to please come and present their findings and their deliberation to the panel. It would be Mr. Porter.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to both members, to both teams. Both did, we thought, very well. They were very composed in general. They spoke well. They were articulate. They had generally pretty good command of the material, and we were impressed with that. We felt that it was refreshing to see young people, certainly at this stage, speak with the level of confidence that they did, to speak with the level of authority that they did. And really, we want to take some time to congratulate you guys. There were just a couple points to note that we'd ask or suggest that the debaters pay some attention to. Body language is critical, and the use of body language can make or break a debater. So body language in that sense includes the use of certain gesticulations. So you can use your hands, you can point, you can, do little things like this, and this, and this. You can also step back to emphasize a point. You can step forward to emphasize a point. You can raise your eyebrows. You can even smirk. These are tools in your arsenal that as you develop into better speakers, you will use. And I'd recommend that you give serious consideration to this. Because in this case, the points between the top two debaters were so close, and we battled primarily because of the body language issue. Having said this, we also note that at times there can be a tendency to read, and at times there can be a tendency to recite. Both can be good. For example, if you're reading from a reference, from something that someone has said, you can read it, and you can read it, and you can emphasize the effectiveness of it. You can use your voice to modulate when not looking on the paper, but you can also use it when you're reading. And so we thought that these were things that we should give a little bit of consideration. You have to strike a balancing act when you're speaking from memory and when you're reading from the paper. A good debater knows when to do both. And again, as we develop, we will use it effectively. Overall, having said all that, we were impressed. And we thought that in general, the students, the debaters, took these tools into consideration when they debated. And again, as I said, as you get more advanced in the art of debating, then it will become even easier for you to utilize it. Having said this, one point separated the two top debaters. And ultimately, after much discussion, some back and forth in the judges' room, we agreed that the best debater for tonight was Mr. Adams, the proposition leader.
So we say congratulations to Mr. Ivor Adams, having cornered and come out. He came out with both his gloves up and certainly presented a convincing argument. He is a judge, the best speaker. At this time, we'll now call the chief prepared presentation judge, Mr. Colin Johnson, who is going to come and speak to its constructive development, and that's what he's going to speak to on the panel. And then after that, you would hear the results.
Good evening, everyone. I too would like to congratulate the debaters and the organizers for a wonderful job. We had a hard time, so we can congratulate you for that, because it was difficult judging. But I like to adopt the protocol that my partner here established. And it was everything he said, we agreed with. But I would just like to say a few things about the debaters before we get you out of here so you can go home and cook. We thought that the debate overall was quite good, and the debaters, they all debated confidently, and there was evidence of research, and they were all familiar with the topic. To be more specific, the first speaker of the proposition, he set out the parameter of his argument, and he was clear and confident. Also, his development of his argument was sound and logical, but we also thought that he could have used a bit more regional and local facts and stats to support his argument to bring it home. Also, we thought that he should have made a greater effort to compare the fact that the men or fatherlessness is number one compared to other factors. That should have been brought out. But all in all, we thought that he did quite a good job. And we move to the first speaker of the opposition. He too did a great job, and he also set the perimeter for his argument and the argument for his colleague. There was evidence of research also, and we also thought that the research could have been a little bit more local so that it could be a little bit more understood by us and even regional. we would like you to avoid blanket statements, though, like there is absolutely no evidence. Perhaps you didn't find any evidence, but there might be some evidence, so be careful. Apart from that, we think that you did quite a good job. The second speaker of the proposition, she did well in supporting her partner, her colleague. And again, there was evidence of research. I think that she started a bit slowly, but in the end, she warmed to her task. I think that you should work a little bit on improving your posture so that you could command the stage. And finally, the second speaker of the opposition. For us, we thought you were confident, as you are now. And that came out because you did not have to rely on the written text. And it gave you a chance to have a little bit more eye contact and deliver. And obviously, when you came down to the text, is when you kind of get a little rattled. We also thought that you used some local and regional stats and facts to support your argument, and so your research was good, and use current affairs to support your arguments too. Then we go to the rebuttal. We start with the opposition. Good introduction, good ending. Kind of ticklish in the middle. I think that you needed to be a little bit more specific in recalling the points. For instance, when you said, the opposition said, you could have told us whether it's the first speaker or the second speaker. So be a little bit more specific and direct, and spend some more time analyzing the argument that you're refuting. However, we thought that you ended quite strongly. On the other hand, the proposition, you also had a good beginning. We thought that your analysis, first of all, recalling your argument was quite good. Your analysis was sound, and you were confident right through. All in all, I thought that all 4 debaters were excellent, and they gave us a really tough job behind there to come up with the final scores, but I am sure that you enjoyed it just as much as we enjoyed it. And with that, we shall get the final scores. Damelo, who has the final scores? Who's stealing it? Miss Way? Who has it? Me? No tengo. Somebody give me the final scores. Did you give it to somebody? Check my folder. No, you were going to give it to me, but you took it away and said you're going to give it to me in here. Check my folder. Let me apologize. I'm 56 going on 57, and it's a hard 57. By the way, it wasn't part of the script. Well, with all the suspense, I will just give you the final scores and the winner. The opposition scored 588 and the proposition scored 621, making the proposition the winner of tonight's debate. So let's hear it for our debaters. I wonder if she had gotten that hug if he had lost. I don't turn it over to the moderator.
We'd like to express our sincere gratitude to Flo for stepping up one more time and has provided our coverage for tonight, the internet connectivity. A marvelous example of a corporate citizen for, many years in Anguilla. They came when Anguilla had no money to offer as cable and wireless, and they have been here ever since. So we say thank you, Flo, for the wonderful way in which you have once again supported education and allowed our children to expose themselves to the real world in the expertise that they displayed here tonight. Congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to the winners. And we would like to also say a big thank you to all of our officials, our timekeepers. We would like to say thank you to the teachers, Mr. White and Ms. Ray, for coordinating this effort and making sure tonight's function did indeed happen. And we have 2 more nights of debates, so we ask the public to be aware of the fact it's 6:30 here at the Teachers Resource Center. Again, tomorrow evening. We'd like to say our adjudicators, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules, for being here, and for gracing us with expertise and good feedback for all our young people. We would like to say Gaff and his team, thank you so much for allowing this to be broadcasted across the world. I actually asked a question earlier tonight when I was coming in, why wasn't it actually thought of that we could have done the Leeward Islands debating competition virtually? And I think it would have been a good call in terms of, having the competition really taken to that level, since we were able to achieve that. The world of virtuality is there at our fingertips. And, it would have been wonderful. You have your virtual judges, everything, coming from a cross mix. But that can happen again in a not too distant future if we even, think about it, develop it. But let me say to my audience, both in cyberspace and those of you who have actually made it out tonight, the entire team that came from the government, op and prop, who are here tonight, the parents who came out in support, and the students. And let me say, so much, a big thank you to Cayenne for her input tonight and giving us a child's perspective on matters such as fatherlessness in our society. For all those who contributed in the way that you presented your arguments and presented your points, we say thank you. We ask that you travel safely, you journey safely to your homes, and God go with you. Have a great night's rest. And for those of you that would be here again tomorrow evening, see you again, Lord's willing. On behalf of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School, Leeward Islands the Debating Society, your host, Mr. David Christmas, saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Please don't forget the snacks.